I've always said that I feel like E&M is like an accordion, like the old ones I play in like the Italian restaurants and the cartoons. I firmly believe that there are some times where we'll go in and we go gung-ho and we try something different, which is brave and vulnerable and beautiful, and it speaks to our ingenuity and creativity as human beings and how much we love connection. And you can get someplace and go, this was awesome. I don't know that I want to live here. I don't know if I want to be here the whole time. And to be able to say, actually, when we were on those smaller slopes where I could just take my time and just really enjoy myself, that's actually where I think I'd like to live. And although it's not as challenging or it doesn't look like these people who have 3 different relationship structures going on simultaneously and I have to share a Google Calendar. This is what works for me and it allows me to do my life and I'm happy and fulfilled in this space. And it isn't a de-escalation. It isn't a I just couldn't handle it. It's I've tried different ways and this is my homeostasis. And that's just as beautiful as the black diamond.
Welcome to Normalizing Non-Monogamy, the podcast where we interview incredible people from all over the world to hear their personal journeys of self-discovery through the lenses of love, sex, and relationships.
Our mission is to show people that they're not alone and to inspire them to embrace their true selves so that together we can open minds and live authentically without shame.
We believe everyone's story is powerful and beautiful, yet it's important to remember that everyone does life a little bit differently and that the views and opinions expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect our own.
Additionally, we aren't doctors. Please consult a medical professional for anything regarding your health that you might learn about on the show. Enjoy!
Hi there. Welcome to Ask Us Anything. I'm Meshai and I'm here with the wonderful Fin. We like to get questions from the community and answer them to the best of our ability. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I specialize in sex therapy and trauma therapy. And in the capacity of coaching work, that's pretty much how I enter these spaces and work in ethical non-monogamy on various relationship structures and dynamics and quandaries. And Fin is here. Fin, do you want to say all the wonderful things you have done and are doing? And it's everybody knows, but let's just hear the shine anyway.
All right. Well, maybe not everybody knows, but for those who don't, I'm Fin. I co-host this podcast, Normalizing Non-Monogamy, normally every week with my partner, Emma. But every month, Meshai and I get together to answer your questions. So just to be clear, these questions today come from within our private community because that's happens to be where the people who sent them in are from. But you, listener, who aren't necessarily part of our community, you're welcome to send in questions as well. There are links in the show notes to where you can do that. We would love to have your questions and to be able to do our best to answer them. And I think as Meshai said, I think we're sort of experts on the topic, but we don't actually have the right answer because most of these questions don't have a right answer. They're just
absolutely
our experiences, our opinions. And, I would say if I answered these questions a year ago, they'd be different than today. And if I answered them 5 years ago, they'd be different than today. So just,
progress.
We're works in progress. We're figuring things out. And where we're at today doesn't necessarily mean these are the right answers for you. These are just sort of our musings on the topics.
I like
and for me, I have about 17 years of experience exploring non-monogamy in different capacities. And I have experience over the last 6 years interviewing over 400 different people about their experiences in non-monogamy. And so I also finished a sex and relationship coaching program earlier this year. So my sort of the expertise I'm bringing to the table is a lot of past experiences and a bit of training and a lot of tough learning moments for myself.
I like that. Yes.
That's how we arrived here today.
Until you dive in.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's going to show up in some of these questions today because there's a lot in here that I would say I've experienced in different ways myself. And so I will say a lot of my own personal experiences probably will shine through in these answers. So I'm excited to dig in today.
Yes. Same.
All right. So maybe we just dig into the first question. It was a typed question rather than a voicemail. Do you have any advice for partners that are starting out in polyamory and moving at different paces? For instance, one partner is doing a lot of dating with the help of apps, while the other person is taking things much slower because they haven't been able to find the people they connect with and are possibly leaning towards meeting people in real life.
This is a good question.
This is a good one. I think we've maybe talked a little bit about something like this in the past, but the different paces is, I mean,
It's a common question, I think, but it's
yeah,
also a really hard one to answer.
it is, and I think part of why it's so common is, something you and I were talking about a few minutes ago, is just the reality of two people doing any activity at the same pace is pretty small, especially if it's something brand new like this, where you're upending your for most people, it's their entire worldview and relationship paradigms that they've had for years and years or decades, and possibly even been in with their partner for decades. So your chances of moving at the same speed as you deconstruct that and put together new pieces and are meeting other people, which is a whole nother factor that you don't have a whole lot of control over. It's like, who are these other people and what are they doing?
Because even when you do that, like, the relationship has to readjust again for that new person that's entering. So each time there's a small adjustment. It's not like pick up in place.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, every time you meet a new person, it's not just a stamp of the last one. Like, well, we've already done this. Like, yeah, but this new person is not that old person, and also I'm not the same person I was back then as well, right? So lots of things changing all at the same time. But yeah, I'm curious, Meshai, for you, what kind of came to mind for you first in this one?
Well, to me, the thing that came up that I also see, like, when I do coaching with other people is just kind of like this comparison, because I will hear people say, like, and unfortunately, a lot of times it's the guys. They'll come in and they'll be like, we were all both on the same page. We were excited, and my wife got on the apps, or my partner got on the apps, and they just like took off, and I didn't. Or if it's the other way around, it'll be like, I have all of these things I'm doing. I'm working, I've got kids, I've got friends. I don't have the time to devote to it the way that he does. And there will be a little bit of like comparison and envy. And then you have that space where you're like, I don't want to hold them back from what we agreed on originally. But then there's kind of like a resentment stew kind of brewing on the side a little bit. And so what I was thinking about that was like, if you just take E&M aside, and you just go with like regular day-to-day life, you and your partner have a different set of like the spoon theory, like how many spoons do you have to give to your day? And you both come into the world with different spoons. Like, one person might have 10 and the other person might have like 3 or 4. And it doesn't matter if you're doing ethical non-monogamy or you're being monogamous. When you run out of spoons, you run out of spoons.
Yeah.
If you put the relationship structure as it is back in like ethically non-monogamous structure, then your capacity and what you have will just look different than your partner's. And so being able to say like, this works for me because this works with who I am and how I stand up in my values, how I approach the world, and that works for them, and they're both okay, and doesn't mean that, I'm not doing well enough, or I'm lagging behind, or people don't like me, or I'm not interesting. It's just, how much energy do you actually have to give to this? Like, I have friends who are definitely 10 spooners, like came out of the womb, like 10 spoons ready to go. And I'm like, I've got 4, like, give me, I'm breathe for a minute. Like, I don't know if I can do it, and I admire their dedication and their ability to be so incredibly on it and crossing the T's and dotting the I's. And I am definitely like that kid on the soccer field that was like, you know what? There's a ball going by, but these flowers look amazing, right? And you're just kind of like wallowing out, because I'm done with my spoons. If I'm out here on the ground and I'm looking at the flowers, my spoons are done. Okay, they're done, and that's okay. And that's probably what makes you both really great partners, honestly.
Yeah.
And so celebrating those differences about each other can still happen in this relationship structure, instead of it being more of like a comparison.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I one of the notes I had in here, I think, and it ties in with this, is by opening, I think, just by dint of opening your relationship up and starting to explore non-monogamy in this way, right? You're sort of signaling to each other in a very clear way that we want to be together. we're not breaking up. We're opening up, not breaking up. And so we want to be together. And I think this is where maybe the difference in your capacities and your spoons is a place where when it's just the two of you, you sort of fill in gaps for one another, and you can step up, and maybe one of you is the brakes that helps the other person slow down and enjoy the flowers a little bit, while and the other person's helping you, maybe accomplish a little more in your day, when all of a sudden you're doing somewhat of an independent activity that's also the same activity as your partner, or a similar activity. It can be really easy to like you said, to compare or to become really insecure. Yeah, my partner went on 4 dates last week and I went on none. I must be doing it wrong. But I think to me, it's remembering that you are in this together, or you want to be in this together, and finding a balance between supporting yourself and supporting your partner, and not tipping over into like codependence where you're sacrificing your needs, right? If you have 10 spoons and you really would benefit, and it would be really good, and you would really feel good going out on 2 or 3 dates a week, for example, and your partner's maybe not able to, or even they're struggling to support that, right? Is there a way you could say, well, I know 3 is really hard right now, so I don't necessarily need 3, but I can't go to 0. So where can we find a place that's sort of a balance between maybe what I'm really wanting, but what is also within the capacity of my partner? And I often think about this, or just sort of is, it's probably going to be a little uncomfortable for both of you, right? You might be
Yes.
going a little faster than the slower person would like, and you're probably going to be going a little slower than the quote unquote faster person might like. And I think, to me, there's a lot of, it's sort of this really intricate dance of how do we slowly work towards where we're both feeling, pretty good, or, I mean, ideally great. You're both feeling great, but the reality of out the gate, you're probably not going to both be in lockstep. And there was a phrase that was thrown out on the show a couple weeks ago on an episode with Bear and Fifi. The way they described it was moving at the speed of trust. And they used it in a slightly different context. But to me, that's what we're kind of trying to do here, is creating the trust that I can go a little slower to support you, and you can go a little faster and sit in a little more discomfort to support me, while neither of us is so far out of our capacity that we're like hurting ourselves.
I love that phrasing, moving at the speed of trust. That is beautiful. That sounds so much more like it holds both parties together in a way that says like this is about building and communication and moving within both of our like windows of capacity. Like instead of it being like, oh, I have to slow down for you, oh, I have to speed up for you. That trust piece is just, oh, that's such a soft landing. I love that. I love that phrase. Love it a lot. Okay.
Yeah, it blew me. I loved it too when they threw it out there. I was like, that's really good. I'm probably going to be using that a lot.
Delicious. Okay. So one of the other things I thought about when I heard this question was when they talked a little bit towards the end about like thinking about how to meet other people and things like that, because, people get a little, I was talking to you earlier a little bit about how people get burnout on apps because we're all trying really hard to like meet people, and we've definitely done the swiping game where, because a lot of times it's like a numbers game, kids, you never know what you're going to get. And so I've definitely been in a relationship before where like my partner was not meeting someone and I was meeting lots of people, or they were like in a really great relationship and it was like crickets over here because I was out of spoons, and also because I was like, I'm just done with the apps. I cannot swipe anymore. And so I think you have to be mindful of like your capacity for swiping, and then go, okay, what are some other ways in which I would like to meet with people? So getting out there and, meeting people in town or like meetup groups. And I know that I'm probably saying this from a very privileged place, so I want to go ahead and acknowledge that. Like if you're in a city or a larger town, this might be a little bit more feasible for you than if you're in a smaller space, to be able to go out and do group hangouts. And I think one of the best things about meeting people face to face in larger groups is that it's a more sustainable way of being poly. Because there are seasons where you aren't meeting people. There might be seasons where regular humdrum, my parents need my help, my family member is struggling, life takes over other things, or my job requires more from me. And that doesn't mean that you stop being poly. And I think that sometimes people can feel that way. And so having these reflections of who you are and how you show up in the world, it's just generally good for the way that you want to be in the world. And so, yes, those are also great opportunities to meet other people, and it creates sustainability in a way that the apps cannot. So I wanted to just put that out there as one of the options.
Yeah. Yeah, I love this. I mean, what you described to me was building yourself a community, right? You're going out to events, you're making friends, and the purpose of those friends isn't to get laid or to hook up or to even build a romantic partnership. Like the purpose of those friends is to truly have friends and have a community, and our partnerships or dates or romance a side effect, a potential side effect of that. Yeah, very much so. It's a possibility, but sort of shifting that focus. I think this is something again I think we've talked about on the show, but I think it's really important to weave back in here. And I would just say, like, I had a really great conversation last night on our monthly men's group call about, actually we talked for like almost 90 minutes about exactly this, about meeting people and meeting people out in real world, real life situations versus on the apps. And I mean, the reality with dating apps is they're not working for anybody, right?
Yeah.
You can sit over here on the side of, male identified people throwing a whole bunch of mud at the femmes who are, have 1,000 matches. And if you talk to just about any of them, they'll tell you that it sucks and it's horrible and trying to weed through it is really not fun. And so it's really not great for anybody. Yeah. And so I think getting out and meeting people in person at events, and as you said, Meshai, like this is also sort of contingent upon where you live, and how much community and how many people are around you and what's going on. But I think even getting away from the idea that the events you're going to have to be non-monogamy focused, right? If you're out dating, trying to meet somebody before you were non-monogamous, you weren't seeking out the monogamy meetups. You were seeking out, what are the things that I like to do? I like this activity. I like this hobby. I like this sport. I'm going to go meet people who do that. And I'm going to get to know them. I'm going to make friends with them. And maybe one of them becomes somebody that I'm interested in or is interested in me. Or, maybe I become really great friends with somebody on my kickball team and they've got an amazing person that they want to introduce to me. So, right, it's building up that community around it and not necessarily just focusing on the non-monogamy aspect of it. I think as non-monogamy grows in popularity and sort of in the becoming a little more
of how like relationships can be done.
Right. It's not as crazy as it was before. Right. And so again, that's not to say if you're in somewhere super rural that you're going to go join a kickball team and half the people are going to be polyamorous. Probably unlikely, but that's not to say that you don't meet somebody out there. Right. And also you're practicing those skills. You're practicing the skills of being social, meeting people, talking to people, even figuring out how to tell people about non-monogamy, that what you're looking for. And the chances of you meeting somebody that are into what you're into, or at least knowing somebody or being able to connect you, I think start to go up. Is it 100%? No, but is sitting on your phone at midnight, swiping right on a whole bunch of people, hoping you wake up to a lottery pick of one person having swiped on you, and maybe that goes well or maybe it doesn't. I mean, I feel like your odds are
pretty similar.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And I would even say probably better off going out and meeting people, because at least you're meeting people, you're having connections, I think there's a lot of power in that, and I
Mm.
want to throw a lot of weight behind that. And I also think, particularly for men or male identified people, this is a much better way to meet people. You get out there, you get to go back to the same events 3, 4, 5 times, volunteer at the events, become somebody that people know and trust and look forward to hanging out with. It's not about getting to the end goal right away. So I get on my soapbox about this one a lot, because I think it's a really great way to meet people.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also a really great way to build community, which I think is what the majority of people who are poly are actually looking for. They are looking for partners, but they're also really invested in community. So
Yeah.
that's brilliant.
Yeah.
One of the other things I wanted to make sure we talked about in this question as well was making sure that your needs are being met and heard, and that you're not like pushing down your actual feelings about your partner thriving in this relationship structure right now. So remembering that like you can ask for things to like go at a different pace a little bit, or to say, hey, this has been really hard and I'm struggling with this, or I'm like working through this, and can we like slow down just a little bit? Because the truth is that sometimes I get in my office people who are like, well, my virtual office. I don't actually have an office for this, but like they'll come in and they'll be like, well, I didn't realize I had all of this resentment. Like when I started out, I shoved some things down because we both had a common goal, and I didn't realize how hard it would hurt in the beginning, or how many things I struggled with when they like got on their horse and like took off, and I was still like waiting for my time. And then when my time came, because I had been stuffing and stuffing and stuffing, I went and did what I had been okay with them doing, but you do it kind of with like this resentment, pot brewing on the back burner. And that person might go, oh, I know I took off at a horse's pace, but watching you do this, man, this is like a different feeling. I'm struggling over here. And then they'll be like, well, I struggled, I got over it, and now I'm doing my thing. But if you had said from the beginning, like, hey, let's build a culture, like a relationship culture where we honor these hard feelings, that we support each other, that we slow down or speed up or find a different cadence together, that at least honors that this is a struggle, then that pot has less resentment in it, and less things where it creates more of a distance from you all when those paces change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I had a note in here that I think ties into that. And this is a conversation I actually had recently on an episode that hasn't come out yet. But the note just simply says, empathy does not equal codependence. And I think this was a thing that I've experienced, where you want to support your partners, you want to make sure they can go do whatever they want. And so you just like, yes, 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 right? And like you said, you're building up resentment. And it can be scary then if your partner asks for something, or if you ask for something and they give that to you, or they slow down, right? Or even just stopping to have empathy for your partner in that moment, to be like, this is really hard. Like, let me be here with you in this. That's not the same as let me give up my needs to support you, right? Let me give up what I'm needing, all of what I'm needing, to make sure you don't feel discomfort, right? You can have both coexisting in the same place.
Yeah.
And I have seen that too, where, right, like you said, one person took off and their partner was like, okay, I just have to support it. And then the other person maybe starts to get their feet a little bit. And then the original person's there like, whoa, wait a minute, this is really hard. What are you doing? Why? This doesn't feel good. And then you're like, well, wait a minute. I just sat in the mud and was screaming and crying every night you went out on dates. And you didn't stop going out on dates. So now I'm not going to stop going out on dates. And right, you can start to then get into like you turn against each other, rather than what I kicked this whole thing off with for me was, you want to be together, right? So we're not trying to just fiercely get independent and get ours. We're trying to co-create a partnership that works for both of us. And that's going to be a little uncomfortable for both people, most likely.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think there's also a thought on that I brought in one of my world famous analogies around. This one was skiing. So I
Okay.
think the idea that, where do you're thinking about when you said, like, you kind of talk about the relationship goals or where you want this to go. And I'm, not that there's a holy grail of the pinnacle of what polyamory is. I think getting away from that and really just saying, there's a place that I want to get from me. I think a lot of times people can be like, well, kitchen table poly with no hierarchy is the gold standard for non-monogamy.
Mm-hmm.
And I often say, well, only if your life can support that and your spoons can support that, right? Like you have to
Yes.
have the spoons to do that.
Uh-huh.
And so again, I'm not going to equate that with a double black diamond on the ski hill, but whatever it is that you're aiming for, that you're working to build towards, you don't, the first day you're learning to ski and you just figured out how to put them on, you don't take the ski lift to the top of the double black diamond and try to go down it because that's what you're supposed to do.
Mm.
You learn all the skills on the bunny hill, and then you go up to the next level, and you go up to the next level, and you go up to the next level, and then maybe you get to the double black diamonds. Sure. But that's not where you start. And you kind of, I think, have to, again, move towards that at the speed that both partners feel comfortable doing.
Mhm. Or
If you want
uncomfortably comfortable.
uncomfortably, exactly, right? Like, yeah, the first time you ride up the double black diamond, you're gonna be like, oh, it's still a little bit fucking scary, but I'm kind of ready for it, right? Or I know I've maybe prepared for this, and that can be hard, right? You're sitting in the chairlift with the person who's like just bouncing off the walls because they've been
Right?
so excited to go down it for 6 months, and you've been quote unquote
Can you
holding
be a
them
little
back,
less happy?
right? Right. So those are the places I think we have to find that. How do we be comfortably uncomfortable,
Yeah.
and grow with ourselves, and I think just maybe one final thought on this is that to be open to change, because you might be sitting down there on the bunny hill dreaming of the double black diamond, and the first time you go down it, you're like, yeah, I mean, I did it, but I don't actually think I want to do it again, right? Like that's what I
Yeah.
thought I wanted.
Mhm.
I'm actually much happier on the blue routes, right? Or whatever. And so, what is it that you think is going to work may not actually be the thing that you want ultimately once you try it. So I just being open to
Can we
change.
just, like, talk about that for a second, though?
Let's
Like,
do it.
how like, I've always said that I feel like E&M is like an accordion, like the old ones I play in, like, the Italian
Hmm.
restaurants and the cartoons. I firmly believe that there are some times where we'll go in and we go gung ho and we try something different, which is brave and vulnerable and beautiful, and it speaks to our ingenuity and creativity as human beings and how much we love connection. And you can get someplace and go, "This was awesome. I don't know that I wanna live here.
Hmm.
I don't know if I wanna be here the whole time." And to be able to say, actually, when we were on those smaller slopes where I could just take my time and just really enjoy myself, that's actually where I think I'd like to live. And although it's not as challenging or it doesn't look like these people who have, like, 3 different relationship structures going on simultaneously and I have to share a Google Calendar. Like, this is what works for me, and it allows me to do my life, and I'm happy and fulfilled in this space. And it isn't a de-escalation, it isn't a, like, I just couldn't handle it. It's I've tried different ways, and this is my homeostasis, and that's
Yeah.
just as beautiful as, like, the black diamond.
Hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, there's no point in skiing the black diamond if every time you get to the bottom, you're a ragged mess and you got, whipped up by the tree branches and broken bones, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So again, not to say like, wow, that was an experience. I did it, I made it,
Mhm.
and I proved
Mhm.
it to myself that I could do it. But maybe that's not where I want to live. Like you said, that's not my sort of sweet spot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and again, not that you can't do it or that you don't
Mhm.
try it again in a couple
Mhm.
years or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah, I think too. What's interesting in this, and we touched on this earlier, but maybe bringing it full circle is the the day that you're both on, you and your partner or partners are on the ski lift, and you get off, and they go, I'm going to ride it up to the black diamonds because that's where my sweet spot is, and yours is down here. But having built that trust over time, that you're both gonna arrive back at the bottom together, sipping hot cocoa.
Yeah.
And you got there two different ways at two different intensities with two different capacities, but that you came back together at the end.
Yeah. And the trust that you've built up to know that I'm like not even worried about them going up there. I know they're going to have a great time, and we're going to have a great time as well when we come back together is gorgeous. And it's got to be a really freeing, almost compersion-based feeling.
Yeah. That doesn't come on the first time you do it. Most likely, right? That building that trust takes time. And it's scary. So
yeah.
How do you feel about this one? You feeling?
I'm feeling like we did it. We did it justice, I think, maybe.
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
I just think this was a great question, and it's just, there's so much in it that I'm really grateful we got to talk about. So thank you to the community member who sent this in, for number one, being in our community, and number two, putting it out there. And good luck on your adventures. All right. So let's jump into the second question. All right. So next question, again, another one written into our community, posted in the community. And yeah, I'm super excited about this one because, well, first of all, disclaimer here, we normally talk about these at length before we read them and go through them. And we started to, and we decided we were gonna just improv this one. So
we're going to wing it.
We're going to wing it. So yeah, I'm excited for this one because I relate to it in a huge way, and I'm excited to talk about it. So, Meshai, what is the question?
Okay, so the question was, so I have this conundrum. I have a very close ENM/friends with benefit that keeps encouraging me to ask her for what I want from her, both in and out of the bedroom. The problem is that the things I would ask for are things that, although they seem simple, I know that they would be outside the boundaries that she and her husband have agreed upon. She has told me that I can still ask. I refuse to, though. As much as I would like to let her know how I feel, I have restraint and respect for their relationship boundaries and feel that voicing them might cause temptation or disappointment in knowing they cannot be realized. Should I give in and tell her anyway, or just continue to keep my mouth shut? Great question.
Great question. Yeah. All right, Meshai, I'm curious, where do you land? What is your vote? Do you vote, are you on team tell or team keep it bottled up?
Oh, I don't know. I have two minds about this. It's like, I don't like causing anyone more emotional anguish than they need. So part of me is like, just don't say anything, because if you already know that it's outside the boundaries, then it's kind of like screaming into the wind. But then there's the other part of me that's like, maybe saying the thing that you both are feeling out loud just gives it the ability to be said and heard and validated. So maybe saying exactly what it is that you want and need, just so that you can say it, because maybe she's feeling that too and she just wants to have the conversation. And then saying, I know that like this can't actually be realized because I respect your relationship. It's outside the bounds. And maybe we don't revisit this anymore because it can't go anywhere. But I did want to validate that I feel as though we both are seeing the same thing and kind of maybe want more. But it doesn't have to be, nothing has to be done with it. So those were my thoughts. I don't know. What were you thinking?
Yeah. No, I love that. I think it's fun because I think we're very similar in this. I would say old me, like I said earlier, if we had this conversation a few years ago, I would have definitely been like, bottle that up, don't put it on anybody else. Yeah, but
shut it down.
Yeah, shut it down. I don't want to cause other people to feel things. And where I'm at today, I think I feel very differently about this.
Okay.
I think, for one, I'm not necessarily responsible for somebody else's feelings about something, right? If I'm sharing in a respectful, caring, compassionate way, something that I'm interested in, something that I want, right? If I just come to you and I'm like, hey, Meshai, I'd love to go to Mexican food tonight. And you're like, I'm deathly allergic to tacos. And I don't know that about you. And like, you're going to feel things. But right, if I do know that about you and I keep coming to you every day telling you I would love to go to tacos, right, that's going to get a little tough. But to share it the first time, right, and to say, especially if you're encouraging me, and I think that to me was a big part here. Like, this person keeps encouraging them to share, to bring their feelings forward, and do that, even though they may know the answer to the question or to what is shared. And so I just, again, I relate to this a lot because this is a place that I get stuck often. Is I don't want to feel like I'm pressuring people. I don't want to feel like I'm trying to convince them or get them to change their mind or anything like that. And I think what I hear in here is, yeah, her expressing interest to hear what this person wants. That's not pressure then, right? That's, hey, I want to know what you want out of our friendship. And then we can have a conversation about what we do with that. And I think that to me is a really powerful experience to be able to go through, to be able to tell somebody how you feel about them, maybe get a rejection. It's also a really great experience for that other person who's inviting your feelings to go through the experience of holding the boundary that they know, right? And I think there's a big difference between asking every day or every week or bringing it up monthly and saying it once, saying, here's where I'm at. Here's what I would be open to. And here's what my life could support and what I would be interested in with you. I know your life may not support that. I want you to take care of yourself. And that's the most important thing here, because I would continue in any capacity, like with our friendship is not going to change. I'm not going to, get mad and angry and run away. Like, sure, there may be disappointment and I might have to work through that. And you might feel, right, and you're not necessarily saying all of these things, but they might feel the pressure. But that's also a thing that they've sort of invited a little bit, is maybe they want that growth edge, right? And so you're both getting a lot out of this that is not the quote unquote end goal of escalating a partnership. You're going through the motions of expressing to each other what you both feel about each other and what you can sustain in your lives. And I think for me, that's like one of the pinnacle experiences you can have in non-monogamy, is telling somebody how you feel, having them tell you how they feel, and then the two of you going, here's what we can do with that information, right? Because you might both be like, I'm madly in love with you, but my life supports something different. Okay, well then let's support our lives, right? And so I think to me, there's a lot of power in being able to go through this experience. And like you said, being able to tell them, like, let's have the conversation. We don't have to have the conversation every time we see each other, but you could leave it like, if something changes on your end, I'd love to revisit the conversation. And if something changes on my end, then we can revisit the conversation. But we don't, to just sit in it and know it was a really great experience for me. I've had this experience a few times. And one of them, the first time, completely changed. It like rewired my brain in like a really powerful way. And I'm talking a lot here, but I just the experience was I was at a training and sort of started to have like a crush on one of the other people there, as you do after being in like really intimate spaces for a few days. And it felt like maybe they did too, but I didn't know. And I was really nervous about it. I also knew a little bit about this person's background. I knew they were monogamous, they were engaged, they were, they had a lot of stuff going on in life that made the idea of non-monogamy was probably not going to be for them. And at one point, actually it came up in an exercise. I made the comment about like, whatever, I, could be interested. I was like very hypothetical about, and I like even projected it outward, not even like, oh, about you, but about somebody else. And they're like, well, wait a minute, it is about me. And almost got like busted. And I was like, oh shit. I was like, yeah, it is actually. And then like we had an amazing conversation, and this was fairly early in the weekend, and then spent the rest of the weekend like with it sort of known, but it didn't change the interaction, because it was sort of like what I got back was like, hey, that's really great to know. And nothing's going to change because like my life can't support that and I'm not there. But also she shared with me at one point too, like, it's mutual, right?
Yeah.
Then she got to share, like, I have the same sort of feeling as you have. And this is exactly what I can do with it. And this is exactly what you can do with it. And so this is exactly what we're going to do with it together. And it was sort of like, it wasn't quite this literal, but it was sort of like, here's how I feel. Here's how you feel. A quick handshake on the agreement of what we're going to do. And then it just went back to like, cool. Like, but the thing that was really cool about it at that point is we both knew. And so we could enjoy the knowing within the container that we both agreed worked.
Yes.
And so did we get exactly what we maybe quote unquote wanted? No, but also yes, because we got to explore the connection within the bounds that both of our lives supported. And so for me, that was actually what I really wanted. And I didn't really understand that until we went through that experiment. Because I mean, taking it back to the last question, right? The idea of, well, the end goal is the double black diamond versus, we could hang out on the bunny hill and have a great time, right? Because we both are within our capacities and within our ethics and within the life that we want to live. And we know that, yeah, it'd be really cool to go down the black diamond together, but we're bunny hill people today. Like there's just something really fucking cool about that. And it blew my mind, and it changed a lot for me. And so I think I'm a hell yes for this. If you can share it in a way when you're again being encouraged, and you can share it in a way that's not applying pressure, it's truly saying, here's where I'm at, and I would meet you wherever you're at.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that as well. The ability to say like, there's no action that necessarily has to come from this conversation. And I think that sometimes we've been conditioned to feel as though the action now has to take place after these type of emotions have been expressed.
Yep.
And I think that's one of the things that E&M is pushing back against, like for example, like the relationship escalator. Like, no, we do not have to get on it if we don't want to, and we can still enjoy each other and have feelings, or we can get off at a certain point and don't have to keep going up the relationship escalator. It's the acknowledgement that hearts are a lot bigger than we give them credit for, and that is good, and you can enjoy it and sit in it. And I think there's also like maybe even also talking to the fear of like, well, now it's out there. I can't ever reel that back in. I can't unsay it. And so if that's not the fear, and I think the conversation had to be couched in a way where there's an absence of rejection and an absence of action on both parties.
Yeah. Well, or I think even the idea that, in some ways in this situation going in, that rejection is like most likely the outcome. And rejection is a harsh way to say it, but in some ways it is a rejection, right? It's going to be you want this and I can't give this. So it's somewhat of a rejection, but I mean, in some ways you're already disappointed, right? You're not getting it today. And if you put it out there, you're not going to get it. But this person is saying like, I want you to be authentic with me. Right. I want to know what you want out of our friendship and our partnership, whether we can do it or not. And I think that deepens a connection and trust, even if it just stays at a friendship level or a friends with benefits level or whatever level, versus like, you can feel it, right? You're moving around with this person, you're engaging with them. You're like, but I don't know. It feels like there's more, but I can't tell. And maybe I have more. But to be able to say like, here's all the cards on the table and here's what we're going to do with them. And then to like trust each other to do that. Right. And, 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 And I think too, you've also got the knowledge in this situation of, I'm pretty sure it's outside of the bounds of this other person's partnership. So if all of a sudden they're coming to you being like, hey, I can do that. Hey, I can do that. Like, okay, but I didn't think you could. So now let's have those conversations. So
Yeah.
it's just, I mean, to me, it's about authenticity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here's what I think about you. Here's how I feel about you. And here's what I'd be open to if all the stars aligned. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
well, they don't align, then I feel great about what we have. And now we know some other things about each other and how we feel. Like,
Yeah.
for me, I guess specifically, that's a really cool place to be. I know that may not be for everybody.
Okay, so let me get this right. So we're pretty much saying the same thing, but you were also saying that they should say the thing and then let the other person choose whether or not action or something bigger comes from that, because it's their boundaries that the other person is respecting. And so it's like, say, if you're being invited, say the thing and then let it be. Because the only person who can change or not change the situation right now, anyway, is the other person who's asking for that information.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not even letting them decide. It's letting them bring forth. I mean, to me, it's not much different than if you're having like part of your safer sex conversation, or you're negotiating what you're going to do for an evening, right? I would be okay going all the way up to this level, whatever that means. Or these are the things that are on the table for me. And I think getting away from like the idea of levels, right? Like, because some people, penetrative sex is not as intimate or challenging as oral sex, right? So what is a level versus, here are the things that I would be interested in doing. It's sort of like the menu of what I'm interested in with you. And that person can go, I'm interested in all of those things, but I also can't eat any of those things. Or I'm interested in all of those things and I can eat these four.
Yeah.
And then you get to go, okay, well, that sounds great. I'm down for just those four. Or, well, I think actually if we did those four, it would be really hard and uncomfortable for me to not get the other seven. So we're both better off not having those four. And we just know, right? So it's really, to me, it turns into a negotiation between the two people of what is the sandbox of your relationship.
Yeah. Okay. I like this.
I think, like you said too, though, not bringing it up every day and being like,
Yeah.
hey, can we change the sandbox again? Or, hey, just a reminder, I could eat everything on the menu. Just want you to know, like, it's, but putting it out there once and everybody knows, right? I venture to guess that if you have that conversation with somebody, you're not going to forget, and they're probably not going to forget.
Absolutely not. No, not that kind of authenticity and vulnerability. Yeah. No.
Yeah. And also, has it, I mean, I think, done respectfully, there's very few people who don't want to hear like, this person thinks I'm amazing, isn't into me, and they're into me. Like, that's a great feeling, right? The feeling of, I feel pressured to do something about it, not a great feeling, but to know that you're desirable and that people are interested in you and can respect your boundaries, like, to me, that's a great place to be.
Also, I just want to say that I think it's okay to have an ask for after this conversation.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to say this, and maybe I know going into this that what I want can't be sustained or acted upon right now. And I'm not asking for that. But for me, maybe this is vulnerable and I'm going to need like a long hug after this. Or, I want to go do our favorite activity after this, or I want to cuddle or something like that afterwards. Just to feel that extra intentional love for being vulnerable with somebody in a way that can be validated and loved, but not necessarily reciprocated with action, maybe in the way that you'd like for it to be. So I just want to acknowledge like the vulnerability in stating how you feel, even if your partner is being vulnerable and receiving it and loving everything, that it's still going to feel like I'm exposed, and it has nowhere to go. So I did want to say that as well.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a great thing to add in here, right? Is you know yourself, right? What are you going to need in sort of the aftercare of this conversation? And for me, it might be like, hey, after this, like, I might feel pretty uncomfortable and awkward for a while. So you might feel me get like really quiet or pull away, and like, that's not your fault. That's not on you. That's me like processing, and I will come back around in a couple hours, like giving people a little heads up of what to expect, or like what would be helpful for some care in that. And if they're able to do it, great. Like, I think these are like, to me, sort of next level navigating.
Yeah.
It's putting it out there. It's giving people warning of how you show up and what you're needing and wanting and how you can and like, I don't know. To me, these are like the really amazing conversations to have with people, and I get all jazzed up about it. So
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Well, you also get to talk to people about how they do this type of connection all the time. So that's awesome.
Yeah. I'm very fortunate in that, I suppose.
It's cool.
Well, Meshai, two awesome questions. I'm gonna be humble and say at least 2 awesome answers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we did. I think we did really good. Yeah, because when you told me when we read them originally, I was like, ooh, this isn't like a cut and dry 5-step thing. Like, this is kind of like a feel and see how it goes kind of answer. So these are really good. So thank you to the community for asking and being brave enough to like kind of put yourselves out there a little bit and be transparent with us. And we hope that like our answers were like authentic and transparent for you as well.
Yeah. I couldn't have said it better. I think I always get excited to answer these. And I love it too when they're like, is so tied to the things that I've experienced and gone through, and especially if they're ones that I feel maybe like a growth edge, right? Of being able to do some of these things in a way that I have never, right? I mean, just on this last one, for example, I have been my whole life the type of person who, I'll say my first girlfriend, quote unquote girlfriend, was 2 people, or like one of her friends was like, do you want to go out with so-and-so? And I was like, okay. Never talked to her again. Just never talked to her again. Because I was like, for whatever reason, it like flipped in my brain of like, oh, I don't know what to do now. So I'm just going to avoid this person. I mean, we ultimately became friends like a few years later in like high school. And it's not like but like at that moment of like, oh, now we're quote unquote dating. I was like, avoid. And so to be able to tell a person like, hey, I have a crush on you. And then to hang in there and keep doing the friend part of it without like running away because it got too uncomfortable. Like that was a massive thing for me to be able to do. So I encourage practicing these things.
To be comfortable with uncomfortability.
Yeah. So I'm a big proponent of practicing some of these things that make us really uncomfortable, because the other side of it is, I don't know, freedom, a little bit of ease. Yeah.
Never having, well, not never, but being able to look back and go, I don't regret that at all. I did a hard thing and I'm really proud of myself.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you, Meshai, for showing up here today and chatting about these and being here every month. By the way, this is our 1-year anniversary together.
Woo! Happy anniversary to us.
Happy anniversary. And just a reminder to anybody listening, you can find links to all of Meshai's work where you can reach out to her, and more resources for everything we've talked about today in the podcast show notes over at normalizingnonmonogamy.com or down below in your podcast player, where you can also leave us or send us an email or send us a voicemail with your questions so we can talk about them at great length.
We can continue to show up every month and hang out with you guys. That would be really cool.
We would love that. So please send us your questions and even send us your feedback. Let us know what you thought of these. And we will talk to you all in a month or so.
All right.
Bye, Meshai.
Bye.